Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I want to talk to you about the opioid crisis. And this is an article titled Americans View Opioid Overdose as a Crisis That Needs to Be Addressed. And I'll put a link to the article in the description for this video. And it says here, approximately 88% of adults view opioid overdose deaths as a serious problem, with high agreement across political groups according to a national survey. However, political differences over who is responsible, I guess, is the big talking point. It says, historically, Americans have viewed people who use opioids as primarily responsible for the opioid crisis, with conservative especially emphasizing personal responsibility for addiction. However, the new study just published in January demonstrates that across political spectrum, more people are placing responsibility on pharmaceutical companies as well as individuals. So, I think this is an interesting article. I don't agree with everything that's in here. And look, I don't care what your politics are. I really don't. It's none of my business, and it's really irrelevant for the purposes of this conversation. You know my mission, which is to save families. And we have spoken to and represented families from every different political spectrum, different religions, different races, all of that stuff. There's a couple things to note about dealing with somebody, trying to save somebody who has a substance use disorder. Number one, it's a disease, okay? And I think part of the reason that people's opinions have changed is that there's always been this sort of idea that the person who has the disorder, formerly known as, quote, the addict, was making a conscious decision, and therefore if they were making a conscious decision to use, they could make a conscious decision to unuse. And I'm here to tell you that I think that has been disproven. It's been proven that it is a disease. Now, it may be somebody tried something and that led to the substance use disorder. It may also be they had a predisposition to it. And what I mean by that is there's a certain genetic component to people who develop a substance use disorder. It's not unusual for us to, when we're dealing, say, with somebody who has an alcohol-related substance use disorder, to have somebody in the family, a parent, a grandparent, who also had the disorder. But I think that's a couple of things to consider. The other thing I think you need to consider is the fact that, and it talks about it right here, it says addiction is so stigmatized that we were anticipating that responsibility would still sent on people who use opioids. And I think that there was this sort of this stigma attached to it, and there was sort of perhaps shame with families who had a loved one who had this issue, and it wasn't really talked about. It was sort of, shh, don't tell anybody somebody in our family has this issue. And so I think that the more people have talked about it, the more families are realizing they're simply not alone. There are lots and lots of families who have been suffering for years and years and years. And I'm here to tell you, you're not alone. I promise you, you are not alone. And so, you can read the article for yourself, but I think what the article really lends to is what I've been saying over the years, which is that if you have a loved one who has been suffering for a long time, if your family is slowly being destroyed, which is why they call it a family disease, because it will destroy your family. If your loved one has a disease and that they cannot make the decision to save themselves, well, who's going to make it for them? If it's not them, who will it be? And there's a couple of options. And I've talked about these before. Number one, you could do nothing and just let it be. Well, if you let it be, like any disease, it will progressively get worse and it will eventually destroy this person and your family. Or you can leave it up to the state. And what I mean by that is that the state can handle this one of two ways, either through the criminal justice system, because people who have behavioral health issues tend to get arrested, or they'll end up in the state mental health system. I can tell you, having been a prosecutor and a defense lawyer and worked in this arena for about a third of my legal career now, and I'm going into my 32nd year of practice, I can tell you the state, whether it's through the criminal system or the mental health system, does a really lousy job of taking care of people. They really do. So we don't want to leave it up to the state. So that leaves the last option, which you as the family can make the decision to save your loved one, the decision they cannot make. And that is going to require legal intervention. Typically, it's going to require us going to court and getting you some control of what typically is an out of control situation. So if you're a family out there and you want to have a conversation about what that looks like, give us a call. Let's see what options may or may not be available to you. If you call us, it's a confidential conversation, even if you don't hire us. But I appreciate you tuning in. If you have any comments or questions, if you agree, you disagree, please post the comment. I read all of them, and I typically respond within a day. If you like this content, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. I put at least one, sometimes two videos out every single day, so you can get the information you need to decide if you're ready to have having that conversation. So with that said, I appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.